it stone tablets, be it Jesus standing on a hill so that he could be heard better. Church buildings were built for religious purposes. Various buildings were built. And if you think about it all the way through, technology has always affected the practice of faith. Maybe burning of incense as a technology. So technology and religion have always been intertwined. And people have expressed their beliefs through technologies that were available that they thought appropriate. So as strange the subject may appear, if you reflect on it for a moment, it's not all that unusual. It's perhaps providential for those of us who consider these things important that on Thursday, Pope Benedict started a catechesis on prayer. And the headline from Zenit, the Vatican News Service, says, "We must learn how to pray," says Pope. He said that on Thursday at his general audience, virtually always and everywhere people have turned to God. But he said prayer cannot be taken for granted. We must learn how to pray, almost as if acquiring this art anew. And so what we're perhaps talking about is whether technology is an opportunity for us to learn the ways of prayer. And perhaps prayer might influence where the technology is going. We don't know which and may influence which and how. And so we're beginning that exploration. At St. Paul's College here, we began to explore communications and religion with a monk, a Trappist monk from Arizona, from New Mexico rather, whose monastery decided instead of producing cheese, they would produce websites. And so we invited him here, and he started talking about that. So the exploration has taken various forms, and it's crystallized in the last couple of years into what is now called the Marshall McLuhan Initiative. Because one of the, well, we'll find out from the experts that Marshall McLuhan has a lot to say with regard to the intersection of technology and religion. I'm going to now ask Howard R. Engel to speak in a moment. Howard represents the Engel Family Fund with the Winnipeg Foundation, which is the principal sponsor of the Marshall McLuhan Initiative. And more than that, the inspiration behind the crystallization of it into what it is becoming. The other contributing sponsors are St. Paul's College itself and Canadian Mennonite University. Canadian Mennonite University has joined us recently as a sponsor, and we'll be working with other sponsors, we hope in the future. It's been an extreme pleasure working with Howard in trying to conceive of what we're doing, pulling it together, making decisions with virtually no precedent because of the
Thank you, Richard. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. What I would like to do now is explain a little bit of what the McLuhan Initiative is and why it exists and how it came about. So 3 things I would like to do. So firstly, what is the McLuhan Initiative and where these technology and religion seminars have sprung from or are representative of. And so about 4 years ago, well, almost exactly 4 years ago, in fact, 2007, we initiated the McLuhan Initiative, and I'll just quote from the agreement to explain to everyone what it is, how it is explained formally. That is to honor, celebrate, and extend the life work of Herbert Marshall McLuhan, 1911 to 1980, who grew up in Winnipeg, graduated from the University of Manitoba, a devout Christian, a beloved professor of English literature, prophetic poet, satirist, and the renowned communications theorist, visionary, and media guru that we recognize today. So why Marshall McLuhan? Why here at the college? My family, as Richard mentioned, the Angle Fund was established at the Winnipeg Foundation as a way of giving back to the community. My family was involved in a business. My father ran a transportation company for over 40 years, which he sold in 1998, and wanted to do something that would carry on. Our family, in spite of having 3 sons, there aren't any grandchildren. So legacy is important for us, leaving something behind that will leave the world a better place. So that's whereupon the Angle Family Fund came to be. And I was wondering myself, how would this take shape? What could we do that would carry on the work? And from transporting goods to people, one of those goods that are intangible, of course, are ideas. And we found, I've been studying in a master's program through Athabasca University called the Master's in Distance Education. And through that program, as well as some prior introduction through my wife Esther, who purchased for me when I was also in 1998, this Essential McLuhan, kind of piqued my interest. And so I was wanting to find a copy of Marshall's, one of his seminal works called Understanding Media. And I found one in a used bookstore. And this was a little bit after I had talked to my dad about this idea of having this, doing something to extend the work of Marshall McLuhan. And I found in this book, this is like a confirmation of that decision, because we found a copy of a letter of a woman who also, like me, discovered McLuhan and wrote to the university asking that some kind of studies of communications be established here. That was in 1966. Nothing had happened in, now 40 years. And so it seemed, the time seemed propitious to invigorate the idea, and especially through Marshall's faith as a devout Catholic. And that was the other thing that convinced me of the integrity of his work when I read about his devotion as a Catholic. And so we decided to recognize that through the Marshall McLuhan Initiative here at the college. And extending his work, what better way than to explore the ideas he introduced for us by probing the media and what effects it has on us in our mediated world. So that's where the McLuhan Initiative comes from. And it now gives me great pleasure to introduce for you today our facilitator, Mark Stallman, who discovered the initiative online. Mark himself, as a McLuhan scholar and also a Catholic Christian, was very interested in bringing forth Marshall's faith life and what impact, how that permeated his whole work. And he was unable to, in spite of his invitations far and wide to people he knows in the church, there were no takers. And when he stumbled on our announcement of our event, he said, there's something I want to be involved with. And of his own volition and expense, came out here to Winnipeg from New York to be with us today to facilitate our seminar. So we're very grateful to have you here, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Howard. It's an honor to be here. This is a wonderful endeavor you have launched. And in fact, we're all marveling here since we're backstage, really at the formation of history. McLuhan's influence is only going to grow from this point forward, and I believe that he will wind up becoming a household name in Catholic and other religious households, the way that he is in media ecology today. The agenda for today's event is going to be a relatively simple one. We've divided the presentations, most of which will in fact be coming to us electronically, into a number of categories. In each of these categories there'll be 2 speakers and an opportunity for question and answer for those of us here in the room. The agendas that were just handed out, you will see next to one of the 2 speakers' names, the title responder. Responder means that will be a person who's either here or on the phone to whom you can address your questions. The first section, which I will be brief and turn it over to Sister Mary Coswin, will be on the focus of today's conversation, which is prayer. And in addition to Mary Coswin, we will have a presentation by Padre Mario Golu. Following that, there will be a section on Marshall McLuhan directly. We are going to have a brief presentation by a student of McLuhan's. Thomas Cooper, as you will see, knows a lot about McLuhan's faith. Eric McLuhan is Marshall McLuhan's son and probably the single most important continuing representation. I hesitate to simply call it legacy because this is very much alive. So I'm going to coin the term here and call this armacy and not legacy because this is in fact a very active and even a church militant approach to these questions. Following this, we're going to talk briefly in a section about a very important Catholic theologian, well known in Catholic circles, Bernard Lonergan. And we're very fortunate to have a contribution all the way from Rome, as well as a fellow who is a Lonergan scholar who will be joining us actually as a responder on Skype. After lunch, we will get to a longer section on electronics and faith, which there are 4 presenters, and at the end of the day, I will be, for those of you who are still around, or ultimately, because this will wind up on the web, who see this web as a webcast, I'll be talking a bit about the last book that Marshall McLuhan published. It was in fact posthumous, title of the book is Laws of Media. And the Laws of Media centers around a specific and easy technique that anyone can use to try to understand the effects of media on our lives. This method is known as the tetrad because there are 4 aspects of how this is applied. And the 4 aspects, very briefly, so you can keep this in mind, because at the end of the day, I will be applying this to Marshall McLuhan himself, which I think has never been done before. But the 4 simultaneous ways that media impact us in our lives are, firstly, they obsolete something we've become familiar with. Doesn't mean it goes away, but it means that its impact is diminishing, so it's on the decline. Secondly, every media retrieves something, brings something back that we might have forgotten, and makes this a new emphasis, so what is old becomes new. Thirdly, every media also winds up in an enhancement, not something which we're retrieving, but something which is now getting a new emphasis, as if we had never known it before. This is the positive contribution. And then lastly, the 4th component of tetrad is sometimes called a reversal. I like to use the word flip instead. Maybe that is a somewhat more dramatic word for it, but all media, when pushed to its limit, finds that it, in fact, has to flip into what you might think of as its opposite or its reverse. So these 4 activities are going on all together. For those of you who are familiar with exegesis, these, in fact, are exactly parallel to biblical exegesis. These are 4 ways of understanding Scripture, which you would expect, after all, since this is a technique to be applied to all media, and Scripture is a media. So the tetrad on the Testament, I will leave to your reading, but at the end of the day, we will do a tetrad on Marshall McLuhan. Now, thank you all for your patience for these introductory remarks. The program now begins, and the first part of the program will be on the topic of prayer. Let me now hand this over. Would you like to introduce Mary?
Sister Mary Coswin. I think everybody in the room knows Sister Mary. She's the director of the St. Benedict's Retreat and Conference Center just outside the city limits of Winnipeg. If there's any place that one turns to ask about prayer, it's to a monastery. And so it became obvious very early that we should ask St. Benedict's to contribute. Sister Mary Coswin was kind enough to accept the invitation, and with some courage, not really knowing what she's heading into. So congratulations for your courage, and I'm curious to hear what you're talking about, Sister Mary, as we all are.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you everyone for the invitation, the opportunity. I feel honored, humbled, and as you say, it's taking a little bit of courage. This is something new for me, while prayer is not new, and the topic of prayer. I was speaking with Mark just before we began, and I said, I'm not going to refer to the media at all in my presentation, except by extension. But I was assured by Mark that it's all media, and it has been influenced, what I say has been influenced by the media and shaped by it, from the written word right up to the internet. And I'm fascinated just hearing the 4 aspects of the tetrad, because I think this is certainly applies to prayer. especially retrieving something old, almost making it new. I think that's what we're seeing in our world today, that old methods of prayer are becoming new and being influenced and influencing our world. So, I believe that prayer is one of those subjects that has to be approached with care and caution. It's a shy subject. It resists definition, and at most can just be described. Eddie Hillesum, the young Jewish woman who died in a concentration camp in the Second World War, who knew her share of relationships, said that prayer is even more intimate than sex. And I think there we have a clue to what prayer is. It is relationship, and it is intimate. Prayer engages the heart, the intellect, and the will. Prayer is thanking and thinking and meditating, and it's more. Prayer is petition and praise, lament and adoration, and it is more. Prayer is conversation and silence, and it is more. Prayer is mystery. So why pray? The purpose of prayer is not to lower blood pressure, though scientists now know that it can and does do that. The purpose of prayer is not to change God's mind, but to change ours. Our mind, but also our heart and our life. Prayer's one true purpose, as stated by the 20th century monk Thomas Merton, is to become aware of the presence of God, and most of all, to bring you to a state of almost constant loving attention to God and to dependence on God. The 13th century English mystic, Julian of Norwich, says of prayer's purpose, prayer ones us to God. O-N-E-S. Prayer ones us to God. And then she goes on to state, which I love, between us and God, there is no between. So in a very real way then, not much more needs to be said. Since there is no distance between God and us, we are by our very being, right here and right now, praying, which Julian says ones us to God. Prayer is relationship. Everyone prays. Everyone prays whether they call what they do prayer or not. Everyone reaches out of oneself for the help one cannot give oneself. Whenever one reaches out to whomever or whatever is greater than the self, one is praying. The wonderful darling saint of the 20th century, Therese of Lisieux, said, "For me, prayer is a surge of the heart. It is a simple look turned toward heaven. It is a cry of recognition and of love, embracing both trial and joy." And she had her share of both. As human beings, we give voice to who we are in prayer. Our needs, our longings, our dreams, our pains, our loves, what we know and what we don't know. The voice of our prayer arises from our flesh. As Christians, we believe that the one to whom we pray came to us in the flesh, Word made flesh, and that's how we make our return to God. I think this is where we get stuck. This stuff of which our days are made and in which we're immersed is the stuff of prayer. It's somehow easier for us to desire prayer to be serene, comfortable, off on a mountain top, in the desert, comfortable, peaceful. Not messy like human feelings and daily human experience. But isn't that the accusation that has been made against religion and prayer, that it's an escape from reality? precisely because prayer arises from our human experience. It isn't an escape from reality. The reality of human experience is, in fact, the ground of our prayer. It's there that we discover our false selves, our bully, our prejudice, our darkness, our despair, and our longings and beauty. This is what the ancient desert mothers and fathers called spiritual battle. The battle is an inner one, mostly, and it comes as a result of the light that shines on our life as we interact daily in our homes, in our workplaces, in the street. That rubbing of shoulders that stirs up all kinds of stuff daily. This inner struggle also comes with being silent and still, where we eventually notice the anxieties, the troubling thoughts, the resentments, which is why so many of us, I think, avoid the emptiness of silence and stillness, preferring to stay plugged in and busy. And that's no criticism of being plugged in. The Catholic Catechism describes something of this in its description of prayer, when it says, "In prayer, we let our masks fall and turn our hearts to God, who loves us, so as to hand ourselves over as an offering to be transformed." We can really only pray when we know we're loved. Even an inkling that the divine other finds me lovable enough to have created me and keep me in existence, can give one the daring to seek help. The discovery of goodness in life feeds prayer, the goodness of being loved. But all obvious goodness becomes the prayer of gratitude. Gratitude over things like the sunshine, the sun on the day at the beach, success in our work, in our school, in education, or in love. Gratitude must become an attitude, which then helps one to believe in hidden goodness and to discover it. And this is how prayer transforms and wins us to God. Demetrius Dum, a Benedictine monk and author